Can I get you to say that on?
Words on the wall. Current status of Timeless Psalter. So let's welcome DJ Randy.
Good to be back with you. I'm excited to share some new things about where we last left the project last year. And for some of you, this will be a new introduction. But this is a wonderful project that we are blessed to be a small part of, with some new opportunities ahead of us to bring this project to a wider audience. So that's pretty exciting. What do you know about Churches of Christ? Pretend like you know things that are positive, preferably. This is where you speak.
Stone Campbell Luke.
Stone and Campbell. Good. What else? Huh? Acapella. Thank you for not saying, oh, you guys are the church without any music. I appreciate that. Because yes, we do have beautiful music. That's right. Acapella heritage, 4-part congregational singing is kind of our creed, right? We are a denomination that's non-creedal. You know what that language means. And so the hymn book has been, in some essence, our creed. And so we come from a rich heritage of congregational singing, but a heritage that has not historically sung the Psalms. Denominations that don't sing Psalms are not so much unique. But about 15 years ago, a group of people got together out of Churches of Christ who were passionate about finding a way to bring psalmody back into, or really into for the first time, Churches of Christ, and that is the genesis out of which Timeless was born. And so this really unique a cappella heritage melding with the Timeless project, which is, distilled down to a short statement, new translations of the Psalms from the Hebrew by Old Testament scholars all across the country, melded with new music, new settings, a commentary in the Psalter tradition, and then a word about those who would sing these psalms, an exhortation, a background, just a few sentences to the singer of those psalms, which also is steeped in some rich psalmody heritage. And so that's Timeless. Unfortunately, because it's 2017, the chances that people in this room will have to serve on hymnal committees is one that is lessening and lessening as time goes by and as the role of the hymnal changes. But Timeless has built on that tradition of using different committees to piece together these pool of resources. So I'm going to let Randy talk a little bit about the committees in which Timeless works through.
And if you would be so kind, pass out one each of these. I didn't think to do that before we started. But the Timeless hymnal committees themselves were formed in 4 layers. What we intend to do by the hymnal review committees is to get representation from experts in the fields that make up hymnody. And psalmody is a subset of hymnody with a very important exception. And that is, psalmody is constrained by the content of each psalm. And so the content, the spiritual content of each psalm is set for us, but the English form of those psalms has not yet been set. And so our 4 editorial committees are the General Review Committee. This is made up of church members for the most part, non-specialists who love to sing. And they represent the church in the initial evaluation of every submission. They sing through it with us. They tell us where the difficulties were. They read through the message, and they tell us where they find something helpful, where they find something difficult, and they make very valuable suggestions. That general committee has the power to reject a psalm out of hand. I have had that done to me. Where I walked in with this song I'm very proud of, lyrics and music, and they say, meh, start over. So we have, most of us who have written very much have had that experience because we give the General Committee the right of exclusion and the right to set the editorial direction. Then the General Editorial Committee is made up of 4 of us, myself and DJ are 2 of us. And then there's a lyric subcommittee and a music subcommittee which refines and implements the suggestions of the General Committee and makes sure that the final product is adheres to the standards that we have set out. This can be a laborious process. As DJ said, we've been at it for 15 years now, and we have managed to produce a little over 300 psalms in that 15 years. Of course, we have the engine running pretty quickly now, and we expect to finish the last 120 or so in 2 more years. But that's basically what we're doing. Now back to DJ.
So along this process, in a desire to make this product as accessible as possible, and I'm just going to do this really quickly, there are kind of a bundle of different things. You may look at this and say, oh wow, there's notes on the wall too. Yeah, when you sing a cappella and don't have instruments, this becomes more important. Yet still there are churches in our tradition who don't put notation on the screen. But that notation is an important piece of Timeless's offering to churches who want to use it. You can get that in round and shaped notes. We still have congregations that sing the 7-shape system, steeped in kind of the musical education tradition, Sarah Glover, England, late 19th century. You can get PDFs of those in round or shaped notes, and there's details on this in your handouts. So volume 1, the first couple of years of this process was sort of more abstract, and as a few years progressed and got into the process, they thought, well, let's do this in 3 volumes. The first volume was Psalms 1 through 41. That's broader than the first canonical book of Psalms, right? But Ancient Psalms for the Church Today, Volume 1, In the Day of Distress. Volume 2, God Enthroned Forever, Psalms 42 through 89. And we're about 2/3 of the way through Volume 3, which is 61 Psalms, 89 through 150, and finishing that up and all of that fun stuff. Only in the last 3 years have we started producing some recordings of selected psalms in 3 CDs. I'm showing you these pictures because the group that we've had involved in recording this are a pretty significant voice in a cappella music in the U.S. today. This is people from the group Voctive, who are incredibly popular. They are the Voices of Liberty at Disney in Orlando, directed by Joseph Martin. You should know that name if you're in this room. If you play piano in a church, if you have anything to do with singing in a choir at your church, if you are a student at a Baptist seminary, you should know the name Joseph Martin. He is the religious face of Hal Leonard Music and a VP for Hal Leonard and Shawnee Press. He is one of our advocates and producers, as well as Tony DeRosa, who's up there somewhere, who is kind of a who's who in the world of barbershop singing. Be Still and Know, Where Are You, Lord? Back in February, we finished Come and Listen, Taste and See, which is Volume 3, and 2 more CDs forthcoming. Each of these has a Rembrandt painting as the backdrop for these, and you can get all 3 of these online. The best way to keep up with this, if you really want to know what's going on, we try to update the masses on Facebook. Just look up Timeless Psalter. You can find us pretty easy. And then we're on CD Baby, which filters us out to iTunes and Spotify and things like that, so you can download the product digitally and all that fun stuff. We go through all that product, and you say, okay, well, what's going to happen when you're done finishing those 3 volumes? Well, those 3 volumes weren't necessarily done with congregations in mind for every psalm. That is to say, we kind of had a wider net cast for compositions that were solicited to be a part of Timeless, volumes 1, 2, and 3, and we're more inclusive of some of those things despite them not necessarily being singable.
And let me say a word here at this point.
That's not on the outline, Randy.
Yeah, the handout that I just gave you is very similar to one we passed out last year, so we're not going through it word by word, but it explains the editorial process in more detail. It also explains the difficulty system that we used in ranking these psalms. We used a system called quills. One quill should be easy enough for any country church to sing. 5 quills, you need the Mormon Tabernacle Choir, and everything in between. Generally speaking, through 3 quills could be considered congregational. When you get to 4 quill and above, you need a well-trained praise team or chancel choir or something like that to sing those. And 5 quill songs, and we have a few, are extremely challenging and are primarily done by university choirs or DJ's group or something like that. But wanted to tell you just a little bit about the difficulty level.
We'll talk about an adapted version of that process in a moment, because the what's next after these 3 volumes are done is the timeless hymnal. I find myself in the position to be the lead editor for this project, and its task, and I'll talk about singability momentarily, is to taking from these 420 to 450 psalms that we will end up with by the time all 3 books are done, to take from there the best of the best and make them, adapt them, put them in as they are for congregational singing. And while this is being done through a Church of Christ filter, our desire is for this to be a resource to any church that wants to sing the Psalms. And as was indicated by our presence here last year, there was a great interest in that, even in this room. So you see kind of 2 sides to this. This is kind of the rogues gallery of outside people from outside churches of Christ who are going to be a part of this group. These are names that you should recognize, starting with the top one. There are some things that Scott is wearing his professor hat on that he's not necessarily wearing his committee member hat on today, because he's hearing some of these things for the first time. But he's going to be serving alongside with some pretty heavy hitters in the hymnological and worship world. Emily Brink and John Whitvelite from Calvin College, Ken Nafziger from Eastern Mennonite University in Pennsylvania, Michael Hahn from SMU, Gracia Grandal from Luther Seminary up in Minnesota, and then Joseph Martin, Hal Leonard, Shawnee Press, composer in his own right. And then just a wide list of individuals, men and women from within Churches of Christ who have had a hand in the musical landscape of different flavors of churches. That's who these 7 people represent. Different universities, different geographies, West Coast, East Coast, Central, North America. There's a little bit of everybody on this team that will give us a great opportunity to offer something that will be of substantive contribution to the hymnological world. Now, when you approach a hymnal, and obviously I've never done this before, luckily other people on that team have, it's a daunting task to figure out, okay, how do we take this from these and everybody who's involved in writing these lyrics, writing this music, preparing product, and translate this to a hymnal. And so we have formulated a charter to task this group, and I kind of want to just kind of share some of these things with you because you may find it helpful really quickly. Again, the goal is singability. I want you to keep that in your mind. We're going to talk about that in a minute. We want to have at least one setting of all 150 psalms in this volume. We take those from the previous 3, selected for use in churches that value congregational singing. That's the desire. Like Randy said, we want everything in this hymnal. If we were going to limit it to a quill, we would not put anything in there that was more than 3 quills. And we want the average, bug tussle church on the corner of whatever street in Main Street, USA, or other places around the world to be able to sing these, right? This is the culminating volume. The group who are on that team represent a wide group of people. They work in conjunction with the executive team, which is me and Randy, the founding and lead editor of the entire project, and another gentleman. We're going to bring this group up to history, and we're going to work in terms of the 5 canonical books. So we'll work in the first book, 1 through 41, then book 2, 3, 4, 5, etc., and we'll kind of work it a clump at a time. Now you say, okay, now only up through Psalm 90 is done at this point. That's right, and so we're allowed to go ahead and get started on the Psalms from the first book. So Psalms 1 through 41, Randy and I are finished editing those, and those will go to the project team. That's abbreviated THPT, the Timeless Hymnal Project Team. We'll take those edited versions after we have sent them to composers to give them one last chance to say yay or nay. We're not going to mollycoddle them, but we're going to give them a chance to say, yes, it's fine, no, it's not. In which case we'll say, sorry, we have already published your piece to the masses as you wanted it. This is next level. So that's sort of what that next task is. Talked about that a little bit. Randy talked about editorial standards a moment ago. What we're going to be asking of ourselves in editing these psalms for publication in the hymnal and of the review team is to, looking through the lens of standards of lyrical coherence, the message of the entire psalm. Yes, there are going to be some psalms that are limited in the scope of their message. Psalm 119 is 11,000 bajillion verses. What do you do with that? It presents its own exception, right? We want to make sure music is well paired, well matched, and has accessibility to a wide range of churches. You notice that item 2 has the Hallelujah Chorus clause. Those 5 quill songs that Randy talked about earlier, those psalms that are more difficult, there are some of those that are of increasing worth and merit that we will want to consider putting them in. I call it the Hallelujah Chorus clause because in 1921, the editor of the most fundamental, most influential hymnal in Churches of Christ included an a cappella setting of the Hallelujah Chorus. It's been in almost every hymnal since then, and that's almost 100 years ago. So the Hallelujah Chorus clause just leaves the window open for that. We're asking our reviewers to say yes, no, or maybe. I know, wow, that's really earth-shattering there. So they say yes, included as is, we vote on it. No, it's terrible, we still vote on it. And the executive committee can veto, but that's the reason we have experts, right? To lean into their wisdom. And then the maybe. And our guess is this is where a lot of these songs are going to fall. Because they're going to be songs that are worth being included that we want to think about. And we want our editors to give us feedback on how we think this could be made a lot more singable by XYZ. Now this has got a great melody, it's got great bones, but it needs some more meat. Or they don't match well, but if you tweak this and this, minimal editing to make those accessible. We know that's going to be a lot of our work. We know that there are some options when the end of that process is done. We can suggest a piece to be revised. We can say, well, just give us a new one altogether because what we have is pretty terrible. Or we can say, okay, you brain trust of people on our editing team, we're really missing something in our Psalm 58 category.
Which we are.
Which we are because it's Psalm 58 and I composed it. But how do you write a psalm about aborted babies? Well, you're going to because it's in the Psalter and we're trying to be true to our desire to include all 150. To which, and then someone may say, well, if you look at the Reformed tradition, there's a great setting of XYZ, or the Presbyterians have this setting, or In Hymns to the Living God, undoubtedly the most wonderful hymnal ever added to the face of the world, that's Dr. Aniel's hymnal, you should know that, buy 10 copies. There is a great setting of this psalm. We want to lean into the knowledge of this group of people we've asked to be on this group because they know the literature, they know what's out there to make this a real complete hymnal. I have hit on this and will continue to hit on this till I'm blue in the face because it seems like there is such little consideration given in worship songs, in new hymns in some cases, and in psalmody with regard to the singability of what we want our congregations to sing. It's why congregational song is becoming a lost art. It's why people don't know how to sing parts anymore or choose not to sing parts, and it has produced laziness in worship. Well, how do we avoid that? By making things singable. Okay, so if a song is singable to you, what does that mean? This is where you answer. If a song is singable to you, what does that mean? Speak up. Go, Nathaniel.
Predominantly stepwise.
Predominantly stepwise. Okay, put that in layman's terms for me. There you go. There's minimal movement and jumps, and I'm not having to use, the entire portion of my cerebral cortex to guess why this song is on the bottom line and the next note is up there, and I don't know how to get from A to B. That's right. I heard, Gene, did you say something? I heard something.
Easy to follow.
Easy to follow. Your ear can pick it up quickly. Yes. A little limited range, right? Absolutely. Anything else? Clear harmonic. Put that in terms of.
We give him a gold star.
Right? But if you were telling that to your church choir and 2/3 of the people at Bug Tussle Baptist Church don't read music, how would you say that?
It makes sense where it goes.
He gave the answer. What are you doing? Are you in his brain?
I'll defer that to you.
It makes sense where it goes and how it gets there. Absolutely. Absolutely. Singability is the primary concern of the hymnal's focus on accessibility. It has to be if this is going to reach a wide group of people. So if singability is the end-all be-all, with singability in mind, you are going to become our general committee for a moment. We are going to look at a hymn that we have already edited, but we are going to give it to you in its submitted form, okay? So put on your theory hats, put on your church singer hats, put on your pianist hat, put on your music minister hat, and you're going to help us think about what we can do to make this more singable, okay? So what I'd like for us to do, I want you to brain sing this first part of the stanza in your brain. Don't sing it out loud. I want you just to look through it, whether that's you're picking a voice part or you're singing the melody, and I want you to sing through the contour of this yourself and just think, okay, I didn't get that part. That was hard. Okay, so I'm just going to click the tempo for you, and you're going to do this with this slide, okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 2, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. And here's the next piece of that stanza, next phrase. 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay? I want us to sing the melody together. Okay? Huh? So that's our key. If that's do, where's our starting pitch? Or be bold, okay? Be bold readers and sight readers, and take this back to your churches. Worship leaders and choir directors and song leaders hate namby-pamby singers in the pews. Don't be namby-pamby, okay? Sing it on the text. 1, 2, here we go. Taste and see that the Lord is good. All those who seek Him shall find rest. Fear the Lord, you are His holy ones. Those who fear Him shall be blessed. Okay, now we're going to try it in parts. And after we read it in parts, we're just going to divide the room in half. Eugene, we're going to cut you in half, okay? Pick a side. And then for 5 minutes, as two groups, you are going to look at this and decide how you can make this more singable.
We got Dr. Angel on our side.
Does Dr. Pendergraft want to lean himself to this side of the room?
Wherever you tell me.
I love you, Robert. You go on this side of the room, and we'll split you, and Eugene, you'll go this way. All right? Who are my people singing soprano? Please, not everyone at once. I'll sing soprano. Altos? Yeah, okay, you need to raise a hand here. Sopranos. Come on, Eugene, be bold. Alto, it doesn't have to be, you don't have to be the Mormon Tabernacle Choir, it's okay. Tenor, bass. Okay, here we go. Bass, tenor, alto, soprano. 1, 2, T and 4. Taste and see that the Lord is good. All those who seek Him shall find rest. Fear the Lord, you are His holy ones. Those who fear Him shall be blessed. Okay.
You had some altos?
We did. Huh?
It was easier with chords than just
I didn't understand what you said
I'm
yet.
saying it was easier to me with the chords than just the melody.
Right, yeah. You could hear the harmonic movement. Okay, so take 5 minutes and divide up and figure out how you, if you were the hymnal committee, would make this more singable. Go.
I'll give you 2.5 on this slide, then I'll change it.
Tell them that the melody is off limits.
Yes, you
You
can't.
cannot change the melody.
That's the copyrighted part. That's the copyrighted part. You can't change it.
The tenor does go up a little.
Setting it up. Especially on the right. D band. It is the way it is. Yes, it is.
It's just kind of an interval from that.
This is all. I know.
That's how it never really felt like it stopped until the end.
Yeah.
And like, it never felt like I was being
Because he knows we're going to
Play the key for me.
Well, they said we can't change it.
Can't change the melody.
Yeah.
That's your key.
I know a lot of times E flat for congregational
Switch the alto
kind of to the E is a little bit higher than that.
Most of the time, the tenors and two sides decide to sing it.
Do you want to take this by page?
You can.
Why don't we, let's give them another minute.
It's a pretty good job.
All right, we'll take this by page so you don't forget.
We'll take
what-
this a phrase at a time, so we'll let you work on this one before you work on the next one.
It's complete coverage, so. Yeah, I also like the sauce.
The alto,
Arpeggio
doesn't resolve. That makes sense, so it's not really
Yeah, those are probably the arpeggio on the 2/7 chord of the bass is kind of hard.
I see you throwing around 2 7s. I hear you. Score your points.
That
There's still quite a few leads.
Well, he missed it. It's a 2-9.
Beats are okay.
Right.
Right. So that the Lord works fine.
Yeah, that's a C.
Lord, you drop C down, and then not.
Good is a C.
Okay, 30 seconds.
Yeah.
And it isn't good.
I don't know, I think the most fun would be to have
But going from Lord to is
Across the
is
bar
pretty
line.
simple without those. It's
Is that
just
good?
those so.
Or the Lord.
The Lord, yeah, that.
Okay,
Switching out.
let's sing it. Sing it again. In your brain, you're hearing your solution to the problems you identified. Okay? 1, 2, just the first phrase, go. Taste and see that the Lord is good. All those who seek Him shall find rest. You got your ideas? Got your ideas here? All right, lock them in, and let's look at the next phrase. Okay? Tackle this phrase now, and then we'll put them together and look at the solution we're going to propose to our hymnal committee. And then you can dialogue with us, and we can dialogue with you about why we did what we did, and you can say, I had that idea too. Okay? So we just ended on the 5 chord. Shall find rest. Okay, so remember how that one goes? You want to sing it one time? Sure. Let's do it. Shall find rest in the Lord, you are His holy ones. Those who fear Him shall be blessed. Take a few minutes. Get your plan.
Can we elongate the melody line? Like not change or not change the notes?
You can make that suggestion.
You may propose rhythmic alterations, yes.
Okay.
That's something we did a lot in the course of our editing.
We will empower you to suggest
Because we
that.
Baptists like to stop on chords.
You Baptists.
Oh, yeah. Y'all like to breathe, actually?
Yeah, I know, it's crazy.
It is.
Yeah, it's just going right into the field of the Lord. It's really fun. Da, da, da.
Jen, you got a plan for it?
On that page, actually, I think it's the alcohol. Good. It's say little ones that it has its how long yeah, the 4 chord thing.
The weirdest thing for me on the piano line is the do, fa, la. That was the weirdest thing. The do mi sol is do, fa, la. It's like a kind of weird.
For the,
Take about another 30 seconds.
Especially after the fa, la, because you don't really find do, fa, la.
See, if only these were shape notes, you'd have shapes to reinforce your solfege.
More like
Okay, let's hear your proposals. We are judge and jury.
are you the executioner too?
Maybe.
No, not
Especially with you.
Oh, with me?
With you, John Gray, I will be the executioner.
Okay.
Because I love you. Okay, so tell me what your thoughts are. How would you make this more singable or better for congregational use? Just raise hands and throw me ideas. Take it.
We said that on that, the Lord, on the, going into the second measure, maybe switch the, on the word the, switching the alto and the tenor note.
Okay.
Making the be the A.
Uh-huh.
Alto goes to.
Stay on the E. Okay. And tell me why you would want to make that change.
I think it's easier to read
Okay, good. No, that's good. Those are good things to see. Leaps are often, especially in alto tenor and inner voices, people who write melodies and don't harmonize their own melodies, and we've had a fair amount of that as well. They're not even thinking about that. They're not thinking about contour of melody and how that is supported in inner voices. You want to say anything about that?
Sure, just basic counterpoint. Next available chord tone is the preferred. And so a lot of times people write to the contour of the melody without thinking about the contour of the individual parts. I think that's an excellent suggestion. In fact, you're about to see that implemented.
Yeah, that's one we did. And you're gonna, and I'll say this because I said it last year too. You think that the only reason you take freshman theory is so you can have rules to break in sophomore theory. But let me tell you, I thank God every day for my freshman theory teacher because it's made me a better hymnal editor and a better composer and a better arranger of things like this, because the bottom line is, and we've experienced this in the studio with the folks recording this, if there is an awkward leap, if there is a strange parallel that somehow escaped our red pens, they have difficulty with it in recording. There is a real purpose to why they're bad. Okay, what else about this first phrase? Nothing, it's perfect just the way it is.
The bass line's kind of awkward, and it's a 1, 6, 4, and then a 2.
A 1 to a 6 to a 6, 6, 4, or to a 6, 6, and then to a 2 with a 2 with an added 9, right? What you're getting at is the leaps, right? The descending arpeggio. We all know that bass is IQ in most instances, unless it's do 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 fa 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 do 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 so. Well, you know what I mean? But you're right. That is a difficult pattern. And especially to go to do to la and not have a so in between there to get you to fa, to back to re, it's wonky. You're exactly right.
Particularly to open a psalm. You're asking people before they've settled in at all to sing outside the 1-4-5 box right away. That's going to lose a lot of people very early. Until you have a 5-1, we generally advise against color chords or 2s or 6s or the other things that we all love, but until you've gone home to mama and done a 5-1, we discourage doing that.
If you're getting on a bus, the bus driver doesn't take off until you're already in your seat. You got to give people time to get on the bus before she takes off. Okay? What about the next phrase?
Just don't give them, going from the last one to this one, you don't give them enough time to find their bearings before you move on.
Quarter note dominant code.
Yep.
Chord on 3.
The 5-to-1 movement almost is hidden. Shall find 5, 1, and it's only there for half a beat. Yeah, and some of that I think you're looking at it from slide to slide, and so that makes it a little bit awkward. If you're looking at it on a page, it may make more sense in your hand than on the wall. But point made. Yes, sir.
Like the interval, the 10 and the tenor and bass on that next to last measure.
Ah.
How parallel it is, just 3 in a row on that.
Yeah. We have differing opinions among us on what constitutes a parallelism. Randy comes from the school of, if the chord doesn't change, is it really truly still a parallel? Where I come from the school of, a parallel is a parallel is a parallel. It's a parallel. Period. My approach to part writing there, Jesse, is that the distance between bass and tenor really is irrelevant. I'm more concerned about the space from tenor to soprano than I am bass to tenor. However, moving that up the octave wouldn't hurt anything. Yeah, there's a certain sonority that Jack, I think, is going for on R.
I'm talking about the phrase below that.
I'm sorry.
There shall be.
I apologize. Here I am pontificating on something that nobody really cares about. It must be like having me in class. But you're right. You're right. And I even heard someone sing something in the room. I won't mention any names. That changed this to make it not only more interesting, but to avoid those parallel tense, like you said. Good. Anything else you want to share about this? I want to show you what we did. Okay, before I show it to you, this was one of the most beloved melodies to come out of Volume 1. The composer of this piece is a very, very dear friend of both of ours, and we even hated the idea of going to him and bearing the news that his most beloved Psalm 34, it isn't very singable, Jack. What are you talking about? No, but he understood the big picture, so he received it well. Randy, why don't you talk him through the changes we made?
Well, you can see immediately that we decided to level out the bass line. You lose some interest there, but we don't think the first measure is the place to introduce that kind of interest. If your goal is to get everybody to sing, so we leveled out the bass line, and that gave us the resulting leveling in the other parts as well. Now,
it really creates a nice pedal sonority, which there's not a lot of pedal writing in four-part a cappella hymns. Outside of my Jesus I Love Thee, I have a hard time thinking of one off the top of my head where the bass is just pedal. There for a little bit.
And we considered doing what somebody suggested at the end of 4 on the first measure, and moving the tenors down to the A. But we decided that with the pedal bass, having that similar motion in the upper 3 parts actually gave a nice effect. And so having settled down the bass, we decided we could afford to do that without losing much in the way of singability. And we kept the pedal for 3 measures, as you can see, and allowed the upper parts primarily they only leap when they're on the same bass triad, and they tend to move by step otherwise.
We also limited the tenor range to a 4th versus a 6th in doing that. You still have the bass descending do to fa, but any good bass could sing do fa. Right? I think you should.
And then the bass is moving to a chord tone that the alto already held, so they'll be able to find that. And you look for those kinds of things. When you're moving, particularly the bass, you need to move him to a chord tone that has just been sounded, unless you're going 1, 4, 5, 1. All right, now look at the end. See the end where y'all identified the problem of moving from the dominant on 3. We just went right back to the tonic in the bass.
Stayed on do there.
To stay on the do and move it over. And then when we made an octave leap, it was set up by 3 consecutive tonic chords. And so then the bass could be very confident about coming down. It's all setting. Everybody says the bass ought to be able to go an octave down. Well, not if he just moved to a non-diatonic chord and he's on the 3rd. He's not going to be able to hear that octave. You've got to take consideration of what the context is.
Which is the one piece that you hear pretty consistently in modern hymnody. The use of the 3rd in the bass line, which causes issues in singability. It just does.
So we decided after that we would move the bass up to the 3rd and have that nice first inversion sound right here, because the tonic had sounded in root position for a good little bit, and now we could come up with that first inversion leading to the 4 chord, and then the rest of it solves itself. And we also
beautiful contrary motion here conductor and the tenor and bass line as they go their merry ways to get into this last line here.
And the last line is a nod to DJ's modern corrupt sensibilities. Yeah, y'all can
What
laugh.
he's talking about is this note right here, and I'm happy to share my reasoning. You know, that session in second year theory where you talk about, retrogressions and retardations and anticipations and suspensions. This is classic theoretical use of an anticipation, where the tenor telegraphs this doubled root here of the next chord and really adds a nice color tone of a second against the alto there, and at the same time provides oblique motion against the bass
And contrary motion against the soprano.
to really give it a nice feel, all while keeping it in a limited range and really easy to sing. Let's sing it.
We also avoided a parallel fifth that was here when we had C, D. Now, it was obscured by the suspension, but we still don't like them.
Hidden fifths, those things they tell you don't
Here you
really
go.
matter, they do matter.
Yeah, they do. If you're singing a cappella, they certainly do.
All right, let's sing this, and then we'll have some time for questions. Bum, da, 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 dum, 2, 3, 4. Taste and see that the Lord is good. All those who seek Him shall find rest. Fear the Lord, you are His holy ones. Those who fear Him shall be blessed. It also, when you've had a little more stable line, it sets up the altos to kind of enjoy this little suspension here a little bit more. Questions about that process? I mean, and we have 450 psalms by the time this is all said and done that we're going to do this on. So in the grand scheme of the process, this is what Dr. Aniol and others on that slide I showed you earlier, they get this packet of the first 41 psalms, however many settings we deem submissible, and they go through the process of individually reviewing each one, then we come back together and work through those reviews, and that leads toward the hymnals coming together as a psalter.
All right. You like the process? Would you like to hear them without having to sing them? Sure. All right. How much time do we have? Do we have time for questions, or is this over?
We need to take questions if we're going to do that. Questions now.
You can play us on the way out.
Okay.
Do you have questions?
I know you're not gonna put instrumentation to it, but would the people who buy the hymnal, would they have the ability to make their own instrumentation without selling that?
We have begun the process of discussing what do the companion products look like. We know that we want to make it, we don't want to make it limiting to the people who buy it. That's not to say we're going to make all your chord charts for you or things like that, because we are trying to reinforce singing. So I think we would be open to discussing resources that aid singing in multiple contexts, if that's a fair answer to your question, without answering the question, because we haven't really decided what that's going to look like. We know it's a need.
Well, any competent organist or pianist can accompany it.
Yeah.
And in all honesty, if you've done the theory part of this right, it's going to be doable. If I can sit down and play it, anybody can sit down and play it.
My question may have been more lenient to a full orchestra. So I was asking if the people who buy the product would have the availability to make an orchestration for their orchestra without the purpose of selling it.
Yeah, you're getting into Title 19 there, and that's tricky territory that I don't know.
Generally speaking, with that last caveat,
Without selling it.
Without selling it.
or
Yes.
profiting from a concert.
Or publishing it for congregational use in a setting not outside of there. If you're following your copyright rules anyway, you would destroy those after you used it, if you're going to be legal anyway. So, John?
When it comes to
trying to purchase, say, one of the level 3 or level 4, is there ways of purchasing 20 copies of it for a choir without having to buy the full hymn book?
Well, now, disclaimer, I own the company that does this, but the company that I am part owner of produces the slides. And because because of the license, we pay the copyright before you get it. You pay by the size of the church, and the PDFs that accompany the slides give you permission to make copies for worship presentations. And so when you buy, not when you buy the books, but when you buy the slides, you are then entitled to use the PDFs to distribute to the whole church if you want to.
Okay. But you have to purchase in bulk, not one?
No, the slides are sold, they're priced by the size of the congregation at the time of purchase. That's how.
So you can print the slides. You won't be buying a book.
You can print the PDF, a full-page PDF. We include that with the slides.
In other words, right now, you can't go buy an individual psalm. You have to buy a set.
Okay, that was what I was asking.
Oh, okay, yeah. Now I'm working on changing that. As soon as I'm the sole owner of the company, I am certainly going to do that. Anyway.
Yeah, it'd help for those that,
Sure.
if I want to do it as a choir, for 1 week or something.
Right.
Sure. Other questions?
What's roughly the process, like how long does the process take if y'all see something y'all don't like? For example, like that last, like how y'all edited that, how long roughly per song? I mean, I'm sure that's not a
What'd you say?
question.
It's 3 hours, but that's because we brought the composer into the process.
We can't do that with every instance. So depending on our familiarity and relationship with the composer and their willingness to communicate, it could be a quick turnaround, or it could be like pulling a tooth, a painful wisdom tooth with rusty pliers.
When we edit each other's stuff, 15 minutes and we're done, because the composer's there. But when we edit other people's things, it just depends. This was probably 3 hours work, but we were extremely careful with it.
Yeah,
I'd say we average an hour a song or less.
yeah, that's fair.
How many total composers are there?
Oh boy, 60?
Yeah, about 60.
That's a conservative estimate, just based on the emails that I am going to have to send out to every composer.
There are quite a number that are one and done.
Yeah.
We reserve the right not to invite you back even if we use your stuff once. Because if you're a pain, and we have to spend 6 days worth of emails getting it like you like it, you're not going to be asked back. And
in all
of you who are
honesty,
composers, this is a general principle of the publishing world. If you're a pain, you have to be really good for anybody to put up with.
If a composer, so the edits that you want to make, how much right does the composer have to?
There's a differentiation in what we have done in the individual volumes versus what we will do with the hymnal. In the individual volumes, there has been back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and forth and back and back and forth. In the hymnal, we're going to give you these edits, give you a chance to give us your commentary on our edits. You get one shot. And we have the right to say, you are a crazy jackwagon. We're not doing that.
And then your only recourse is you get to use my things or you don't. Only the melody is copyrighted. Out of courtesy, we always give the composers a say in the chord structure and the voicing, but that is strictly a courtesy. And once they give us the right to publish their song, we have the right to arrange it.
People like Joseph Martin, who live every day in the publishing world, and the big wig publishing world. Anthems, I mean, you see his name all over the place in the church choral world. He doesn't give you that much courtesy. And other editors like him don't either.
I have sat beside him while we were recording some of those, and I've been chewed out royally. He turned to me and said, "Why do you mollycoddle these composers? You knew that we shouldn't be having to sing this." You know, when there was a parallel fifth or an augmented fourth, we actually had one that got through, you know. An upside down tritone, man, you just don't want to do that. An ascending, I actually had one. And he said, quit monocoling these people, and so we changed our ways.
If you are interested, we brought a ton of product that we'd love to sell you. If there's something you're interested in, if you want to get a volume and take it back to your church or XYZ. We do want to give Dr. Annual a copy here of the first 2 volumes. So you're welcome, inscribed with lovely notes.
We have copies of the piano type hymnals over there for $20 plus tax. The hymn books that correspond to the CDs are 10. The CDs are 16. And if you're interested in any, feel free. I can even take a credit card.